of others who would have not joined us. So just to introduce myself, my name is Martin Wanjohi, and I have the pleasure of being your facilitator this evening. And just a little bit of my background is on the screen. My background is actually sales, but then I got into learning and development from the desire of improving my sales team performance. And I think I got stuck there. And as with every person who gets into training, you either like it or you don't like it. And if you like it, you stay. Then I hold 2 certifications, one in instruction design and the other in balance scorecard. And I practice NLP. That's basically, I did a course that helps me understand human behavior better, a little bit better. So again, our main areas of focus is usually strategy execution, instruction design, performance improvement, and leadership development. And on the right-hand side of the screen, we have a list of some organization who we've been able to work with on a number of programs. So our philosophy at High Performance Africa is that we believe that learning aims to improve the skills to enable better performance. So if learning is not enabling better performance, then we have it's not aligned into our philosophy. So we aim for performance-based learning, which aims to improve the performance of those undertaking the learning program. Now, our session today is on reporting and measuring learning. And before I get into that, our session objective is to review the types of reports, the categories of reports, and how to measure or evaluate learning. Now, before I get into this, I'd like to remember I said this is an interactive session, and how we will interact, you can respond in chat, or you can raise your hand and then you can unmute, and then you can be able to share with that, to share. So let me first start by this question on, and again, you can respond to it on chat. Why do we create reports for L&D? You can share that on chat. Why do we create, let me just post a screen share and then we can have this discussion. But the question we're looking at is, why do we create reports? You can share on chat. Why do you okay, maybe the question, before we get into that, we can ask, who is in L&D? Who is in the learning department? Who is involved in learning and department? And you can respond with a yes, and N, yes, Y for yes, you're in L&D, Y, N for you're not in there. Are we in, if you're in L&D, in an L&D department, if you're involved in L&D, I do not want to make an assumption that we are all in L&D. We might have people who came in to learn. Okay, so why do we create reports for L&D? Any hand up? Any response on chat? Okay, some non-HR may not know what L&D. Okay, when I mean L&D, I mean learning and development, basically training. So if you're involved in training, if you're involved in training in this way, you do trainings, you manage trainings in your organization. Okay, so I'm saying, Monica says to be to be able to account for what has been done. Okay. Someone else? Accountability for the training budgets. Okay, so just to go back to the screen share, and again, it's another question. It's another thing I want us to look at is sorry, let me just get to the, who do we create the reports for? We create reports to be accountable, but accountable to who? And what do they do with those reports? Again, let me just encourage you to share on chat. Who do you create? Who consumes those reports that we create? Okay. I think we'll come into that. Then the other question was, and this is a point of discussion, is what are these reports used for? Yes, they're used for decision making, but what kind of decisions? So just to go back to the first question on what reports we do create, we can create quite a number of reports, and this is based on who is the consumer of that report. The head of learning or the head of HR might require a different kind of report from the CEO or from the head of finance. And who do we, again, the question of who do we create the reports for, that would be for either internal departmental consumption or for C-level. And what these reports are for is basically they're used for decision making. Decision making on, are we spending, are we utilizing our budgets? Are we having people learn in the organization? Are we gaining a return on the investment on training? Now, a number of reports. This is basically, this is a framework on your left. You can see a framework, and this is called the Talent Development Reporting Framework. And it helps in making the L&D department run like a commercial department. Most people say you either have a commercial department or a support department. Commercial departments bring in the money, support departments consume the money. Now, you can, using the talent development reporting framework, you can actually be able to create analytics, create reports that actually show this is the input we put into learning and development. These were the skills level, and this skills level at this particular point in time were giving us this amount of revenue. But then now with this training, X and Y has improved. Again, now you will see the types of the reports and the users. Now, on the top, you have your executive reports. You can have a report on the L&D summary report, which is quarterly. Then you can have your L&D program report. What trainings are you running and how many people are taking them? How many people have completed them? And then you have your L&D operational report. Then the other thing is now when we go to the KPIs, right? The KPIs, we have about 120 KPIs within L&D. And those 120 KPIs can be categorized into 3 key areas. These are let me just go ahead. Outcome KPI, effectiveness KPI, and efficiency KPI. Those are the broad 3, how you can classify them into 3 broad categories. Now, each one of them, like your CEO would be interested in the outcomes. They're not keenly interested in how many trainings we have as an organization, how many trainings have people attended. What would be interested in is, okay, we have done 20 trainings or we've done 15 trainings. what has been the outcome. The effectiveness goes into what is the engagement level, how many people are completing, and the efficiency level would be how many trainings do we have available for employees in the organization. And those three form the broader types of KPIs. Again, the types of KPI an organization uses would depend on the maturity of the organization. And when I mean the maturity, it is not definitely how long it has been in existence, but how well is it applying L&D. It's not just about having trainings where people can attend. It's about how mature are they in data analytics, in measurement and evaluation. So let me just ask, what are some of the KPIs that you have in your training department, or what are some of the KPIs that are measured in your organization? You can share that on chat. What are some of the KPIs that might be in your scorecard within learning and development? You can share that on chat. Hey, as we wait for people to respond to that, I'd want to look at evaluation. And just to mention, this, I will want to go through this, then I want to take questions. So within evaluation, there are two key models, frameworks you can use for evaluation. And to be able to evaluate, how you design your learning program is key. We can design a learning program and we use learning objectives to evaluate learning. So if your learning objectives are not measurable, and there's a framework of creating learning objectives, if you're using words like understand, you cannot be able to evaluate how well people understood. So there's a framework, it's called, we use Bloom's taxonomy to create measurable and evaluatable learning objectives. And Kirkpatrick, the model that we use that can be used for evaluating is Kirkpatrick's model of evaluation. And Kirkpatrick has a number of levels. Level 1 is what traditionally we call the feel good. These are the form or the smiley sheet. These are the forms people fill in a training, and they evaluate how good was the place, how good was the trainer, were they knowledgeable about the subject, and that's a level 1. Level 2 is where now we get to evaluate the learning itself and the learner. We want to do an assessment on how much did the learner learn. And we can do this after maybe 2 months of the program. And this is what we call a knowledge check. So we'd create an evaluation for the training and assess how much of the learning the learner was able to take. Then level 3 is behavior. Now, this evaluation is actually done by the supervisor of the employee. And this can be done about 3 or 4 months. And we'll be wanting to find out, has there been any behavior change of the person who undertook the training? And the behavior change would be impacting on their performance. Then the level 4 is level 4 is results. So we took someone for a training. They could do perform tasks to a certain level. And that level that they would perform would give us a specific revenue or a specific result. Now, what results are they giving us post them attending the training. This is an evaluation that can be done, assessed after 6 months. Now, here to note is it is good to evaluate learners before they actually go for a training program so that you can set the baseline. And after 6 months, then you can attribute most of the improvement to the training. Yes, I know there are those people say environmental factors that can affect performance, but then you also need to factor that on in. Then the other model is Philip's model of return on investment. And this is, you can only say that we spent in year one, in this year, we spent 2 million in trainings, and we were able to get this kind of profitability. The year before we had spent million shillings and we got this level in profitability. So Philip's model of ROI aims to look at what is the return on investment? What are we getting from the budget that we're using in L&D? I'd like to pause there for a minute and then welcome questions, and then before we move on. And then we'll also look at some of the questions that had been put on the registration form. Okay, we have any questions? We'll come back to this. Any questions from you can put them on chat or you can raise your hand and then you can ask. So normally I say if there are no questions, either people have understood everything that has been shared around or you completely lost them. Normally I like going with number 2. It's always a safer place. Maybe Helen, any questions? You can unmute and ask a question.
I don't have any question. You know me, I just ask when I have.
Okay. So I'll take that nobody has any question and we can proceed then. So, okay. So I'm seeing a question. I want to know if it is solely duty of HR practitioner to set relevant training departments in an organization. Now, training falls under human resource. Now, and then the HR department would have some other sub-departments. There might be training admin, but ideally it would fall within the HR docket. But again, HR doesn't do everything around L&D. There are those other facets of training, the program, designing and designing and developing the program, doing the TNA. You have subject matter experts. So again, if it is just setting up, yes, HR can set up. But again, it depends on the size of the organization. So Banjo, I hope that answers your question. But ideally, I would say HR is responsible for people. Training and HR again is responsible for performance. HR is, then HR would be best placed to set up learning, to manage learning, and to develop learning. And that's why we also focus our trainings to HR, so that we're able to skill HR around learning and development. Okay, so the other thing I want us to look at is, before we press on and okay. Let me just stop pause for a minute, and I want us to look at some of the questions that had been answered. And I'd like you to just, if you have any question, you can ask. So some of the questions that had been asked, just to read, for me to pull the questions. There was how can L&D practitioners convince management on the positive contribution of learning and development? Now, ideally, L&D practitioners need to show what is the return on investment. What is the organization gaining by the trainings they're running? And we all agree under various circumstances, the training budget is usually the first budget to be able to be cut, is usually the first budget to be cut off. And this is because L&D has not shown its value. So again, L&D to convince management on why they need learning is best to show the value. And the TD, the Talent Development Reporting Framework, is a good framework to use to be able to show the value of learning in the organization. Then there was a question of how do you measure behavior impact of learning, considering learning should greatly impact behavior change. Now, again, we've seen on Kirkpatrick's model, level 3 evaluation is on behavior. So if you set up your all the 5 evaluations, then you can be able to measure the change of behavior. And again, this is reported by the supervisors, and there should be a report before the training and some 5 months after the training, then you can be able to see the behavior change. Some other question, how do you follow up to check change in behavior for leaders you take through leadership courses? Now, again, the supervisor of those people who took the leadership courses would be actually the ones to check, to assess, to help you assess the behavior change in those who undertook any training, whether leadership or whatever. The other thing is how do you effectively do individual performance management, measurement and management? Now, I would like to keep that question for the session on productivity and performance. The other was how do you successfully execute strategies in a family business that is not flexible and open to change? Well, number one, you cannot force change, but if you create a compelling agenda for change, that if the family sees that if they do not change, then the business would come to an end, I think that would call for them to be able to adopt change. I'm just looking for another question. How to identify and develop a successor in leadership? I'll want to keep that question for the leadership and the leadership program. Okay. Okay, so as we come to the end, again, I had no intentions of keeping this long. As we come to the end of this session, I think what I'd want to look at is, again, I'm opening for questions. Problem with Office Online for the presentation, you have to go through all the slides to get to where you're going. The last thing I'd like to talk about is our L&D learning programs. And High Performance Africa runs 2 key programs around learning and development. One is a certified instructional designer. We've run this program twice. We've certified about nearly 60 people locally. And then the other program we want to start running is a certified e-learning instruction design. I think that's one of the programs that is coming up. And we will be sharing our calendar with you for your review and assessment. And I think I'll also make this recording accessible to everyone who had signed up for the session. I think I'd like to open for questions or comments or any query. And just to inform you, we'll be keeping our sessions not more than 35 to 40 minutes. Again, so we'll want to pack them with information that will actually be helpful to you. And maybe post that, we can share one or two things which we mentioned in the program. Like what I mentioned, the TDPR model framework. I think I'll be sharing that with everyone who registered for the program. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, let me take your questions if there are any, or comments, and then we can close the session. Okay, this is a very quiet class. Let me stop recording.